Hey, it's Sam. And you know, I'm very inspired by the words in Brihat Parashara Sastra, and in particular, the first part of the text before he even starts talking about astrology. There are incredible verses that describe the nature of existence and Lord Vishnu and the principles that are also common in Sankhya philosophy, which is the philosophy of Ayurveda and yoga. And I wanted to go over a couple of those because I bet you'll really enjoy hearing about this. In the first chapter, in verse 9 through 12, it says, Lord Vishnu, who is the Lord of all matters, who has undefiled spirit, who is endowed with the three Gunas, although he transcends the grip of the Gunas, who is the author of this universe, who is glorious, who is the cause, and who is endowed with valor, has no beginning. He authored the universe and administers it with 1/4 of his power. So think about that. This entire universe is 1/4 of the power of Lord Vishnu, or of what you would say God. So this physical universe, this apparent universe, or the universe of appearance, is just 1/4 of the power of Lord Vishnu. Then he goes on to say, Mahatattva, Ahamkar, and Ahamkar Murti are Brahma, are born from Shankarshan, Pradyuma, and Anirudh respectively. So Brahma is the god of creation. And then he said, all these three forms are endowed with all three gunas, with the predominance of the guna due to their origin. So he's talking about, again, these other qualities that are shown in Sankhya philosophy. Mahatattva, tattva is like the essence, and then Ahamkar, which is feeling or ego or the separateness, what's called the eye maker, and then Ahamkar Murti, which is the form that it takes, are Brahma and born from these different aspects of God. Then he goes on to say, Ahamkar is of three classes: Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic dispositions, which means divine class, sensory organs, and the 5 primordial compounds. So basically he's saying that once we separate from spirit, once Lord Vishnu brings us into this form, it creates this separation from Purusha and Prakriti, which is the ineffable form of God, and the separate form, and then that filters down into Ahamkar. Then Ahamkar is of 3 classes: Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and then the sensory organs and the 5 primordial compounds. Now, it means they are respectively from the said 3 Ahamkaras, which we talked about earlier. So Lord Vishnu, coupled with Shri Shakti, rules over the 3 worlds. Coupled with Bhoo Shakti, he is Brahma, causing the universe. And coupled with Neel Shakti, he is Shiva, destroying the universe. So again, it says right at the very beginning that Lord Vishnu is in this form, and in these forms that are spirit, behind form, only 1/4 of Lord Vishnu is the form. The rest is all imperceptible except for those of high maturity, as it says, or those who are saintly, who have done the spiritual progress to unfold consciousness. Then the rest of then once he starts to bring beings into this form, there is the Purusha and the Prakriti, or the essence and the substance, and then that breaks down into Ahamkara, which is the agency of separateness. Then that becomes 3 gunas and 5 elements, and breaks down into Shri Shakti, which is ruling over the 3 worlds, all 3. Bhoo Shakti, where he's Brahma, the separateness, and then Shiva Shakti, Shiva or Neel Shakti, which is destroying the universe. So that familiar concept of creation, maintenance, and destruction is also discussed. Then Parashara talks about the Lord is in all beings, and the entire universe is in him. All beings contain both Jivatma and Paramatma. Some have a predominance of the former, while some have the latter in predominance. Paramatman is predominant in the Grahas. So the Grahas are Paramatman, or supreme consciousness. That's predominant in the Grahas, or the planets, and Brahma, Shiva, and the others. So the planets are on the same level as Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Their powers, or consorts, too, have predominance of Paramatman. So it means when you see Shiva and Shakti, Vishnu and Lakshmi, Brahma and Saraswati, they're also Paramatman. Others have more of the Jivatman. Then he says that the incarnations of the planets, which include, the Vishnu avatars of the planets, which include Lord Rama for the sun, Lord Krishna for the moon, Mars, Narasimha, and the other Vishnu avatars incarnate as the planets, and then when they're finished their work, they merge back fully into the Grahas. So they're full incarnations of each planet, then they merge back into the Grahas once their work is done. And that this unborn Lord, he says, has many incarnations. He is incarnated as the 9 planets to bestow on the living beings the results due to their karmas. He is Janardhan. He has assumed the auspicious form of Grahas to destroy the evil forces, or the demons, and to sustain the divine beings. So Lord Vishnu as Janardhan means Vishnu who destroys the illusion of birth. Janardhan comes from Janma, like Janma means birth. So to destroy that illusion of birth, Lord Vishnu is incarnated as the 9 planets to maintain this universe and the karma, or the timing of when these lessons are going to come. And in this form he is Janardhan, which destroys the illusion of birth, the illusion that you were born. You know, it's very interesting. My guru Amma says, your real birthday is the day you realize you were never born. It's a beautiful little sentiment. Think about it. Your real birthday is the day you realize you were never born. Then you're actually born into the true self. And so Lord Vishnu is incarnated as the 9 planets in the form of Janardhan to destroy the illusion of birth, to destroy the illusion that you were already born. Again, bear in mind, all this is said before he says anything about astrology. This is the first couple chapters. So this is what I'm going to be talking about in the Toronto workshop. The first day we're going to be examining these things, and then we're going to take these principles and start applying them to planets, signs, and houses a lot on the first day, and then we're going to take those principles into the next couple of days. So that you start with astrology being what it actually is, rather than, again, some kind of trick or some kind of way to help you get what you want. So then he goes on and describes each of the Vishnu avatars. So there are what are called Vishnu avatars for each of the planets. So as I said, the sun was Lord Rama, Lord Krishna is the incarnation of the moon, Mars is Narasimha, Buddha was Mercury, and so on. And so the planets have all incarnated as these beings, and then they go back into the planets once they're finished. And what he also says is, after completing their mission, the Paramatman beings again merge in their Grahas. And indeed, after this universe is finished, or after the mission of this universe is finished, the Grahas again merge into Lord Vishnu. And then he says, the Jivatma portions of the Grahas take births as human beings and live their lives according to their karmas, and they then again merge in the Grahas. At the time of the Great Destruction, the Grahas as well merge in Lord Vishnu, as I said. So this is who we are. The Jiva-Atma portions from the Grahas take births as human beings and live their lives according to their karmas, and again merge in the Grahas. At the time of the Great Destruction, the Grahas as well merge in Lord Vishnu. And he says, the one who knows all of these will become versed in the knowledge of the past, present, and future. Without a knowledge of Jyotish, this cannot be known. So again, you're meant to know all of the incarnations of Vishnu. These are all part of you. This is who you are. So when you study Jyotish, you're studying that. Hence, everyone should have a knowledge of Jyotish, particularly the Brahmin, which means the educated people. When people of that time are speaking of a Brahmin, they're not necessarily speaking of a priest, they're speaking of an educated person. But he says everyone should have a knowledge of Jyotish, particularly the Brahmin. The one who, devoid of knowledge of Jyotish, blames this Vedic science will go to a hell called Ralrava and will be reborn blind. Very interesting thing to say, the one who blames this Vedic science. What does that mean? Well, think about what people do with Jyotish. Oh, it's my astrology. Oh, that's the reason I have this problem. Or it's my karma. I can't overcome it. Without learning about what it is. It's a very interesting approach. And this is why, frankly, my work shifted many years ago. Once I started to really delve into this text, away from just giving people readings and perpetuating this delusion they have. I'm sorry to say. This delusion that astrology is some like fortune-telling mechanism that's supposed to like help you get what you want. It's the knowledge that we're supposed to have about how the universe works. That's what it is. We're supposed to understand it. Parashara says it. Hence, everyone should have a knowledge of Jyotish, particularly the Brahmin. And when he means Brahmin, he means educated people, because think of how much you think you know because you've been educated. You've been taught a bunch of stuff. And based on all that stuff you've been taught, you think the universe works a certain way. You think reality is a certain thing based on what you've been taught. That's what a Brahmin is. A Brahmin is someone who has been taught stuff. They've been educated. Back then, the way they were educated was much more, was much closer to all of these divine sciences. That's what they were taught. Now we're not taught that. We're taught other things. And based on those things we're taught, that's what we think the world is. Based on what we've been taught. All right? So he says everyone should have a knowledge of Jyotish, particularly the Brahmin. Because he knows that if that intellect will feed you a philosophy of what everything is. Well, this is what the world is. That's what I've been told. So again, this is what Jyotish really is, right? And so we're supposed to understand that we incarnate with these karmas because we're still in the Jivatma portion. But then after the Jivatman, as we evolve toward full consciousness and as we evolve toward the Paramatman, the planets are the agents of Vishnu that give us our karma. So they're all these forces of intelligence. They're forces of intelligence in you that are playing out in your mind and in your Ahamkara. So this is what we're going to go over, at least conceptually, in the first day of the Toronto workshop. Of course, as I say, there's a lot to talk about here. I'm going through all this very quickly. But then we're going to take these concepts and see how they are shown. Then once we start to examine the planets, the signs, the houses, and the specific rules, you see these principles of Sankhya philosophy repeated over and over and over again in the other chapters of Brihat Parashara. And the reason that text is so powerful is because, again, he expects that you know what this means. And then by the time you get into then he gets into talking about the planets and the Gunas, he expects that you already understand all of this stuff. And see, these first couple chapters are the things that most astrology teachers hardly ever talk about it. You never hear this stuff talked about. They just start, if they even use Parashara as the main text, they just pull it, because all of the ancient texts on some level they seem to say the same thing, but they're really not the same thing. And none of them has this introduction, because this was from the Rishi Parashara. This is why every text is not the same. So, we're going to examine these concepts, and of course, especially as they relate to Ayurveda, it's the same philosophy. This is what Sankhya philosophy is. And of course, with Ayurveda, it started back in the Charaka Samhita and parts of the Atharva Veda and things like that. But, by the time we got Brihat Parashara, these things had been codified more and put into this content or into this structure, so that once we started to wake up again, we would have these texts to refer to. Back then, it was just kind of knowledge, the common knowledge, basically, that this is the way it worked. And these ancient texts were basically written down so that once we woke up again, we would be able to find the answers. And that's what we're doing in this day and age, is to reawaken out of the out of our descent into the Kali Yuga, into the Dark Ages, we're now waking up again to the truths behind all of these things, so that astrology is not just fortune telling and superstition, it's actually the science of how spirit takes form, and we see that clearly in this ancient text. So this is the sort of context of the weekend after we really examine these principles in great detail, and then the specifics of how these principles are shown through planets, signs, houses, nakshatras, the sacred astronomy behind it all. We're going to go into a lot of that astronomy that you probably don't grasp so well because it's very tricky. The sacred number 108 and how that's shown in all this astronomy and all of the cosmology, and even how it's shown in different cultures. Then we're going to look at the astrology chart and see how this shows up in your life, and in the rhythm and the cycles of time that's always happening in the sky, and also as it's shown like in your natal chart and in other people's natal charts. So this is great for students who have either already studied with me for a while or those of you who haven't. Definitely looking forward to teaching this though, and we have a great center there with Andrea Oliveira and her center, and we have a lot of support on the ground. As soon as you register, you'll get sent all this information of places to stay and people to network with to make sure that your stay in Toronto is, easy. All that'll be taken care of. It's very simple. Don't let that hold you back. But the other thing is that, if there's still slots available, because I'm not sure when you're seeing this video, you want to get on it, because as I'm recording this in early May, we're getting close to having half the slots already accounted for, and in the next several weeks, it's going to fill up. We'll probably be done even, having people register by the end of May. So you want to get on it, and I can't wait to see you there in Toronto.